you've seen different businesses build in different ways. I'm curious to know, what are the early signs that the business is ready to scale?
The right time to scale is when you're clear on a few things. You're clear on like the key equations in your business. What's your equation for revenue? So if we were to take retail, you use footfall, conversion rate, basket size, right? Nobody's going to do anything unless they know why.
Yeah.
Do you understand? And you and I, we have a different why.
Yeah.
Sometimes the people we are selling to, their why is very different.
Yeah.
And when I wake up, what is my biggest issue? Just my ability to eat, my ability to prosper, my ability to build wealth at whatever level or aspiration I have reached. And if we lose sight of that, you lose sight of incentives that guide people to do anything they do in this world. There's a difference between growing and scaling, right? You can grow. Doesn't mean you grow well, you grow healthily, you grow profitably. You can absolutely grow. Growth is simply just getting bigger, just doing more, right? But scaling, each incremental unit of value you earn should be cheaper than the last, theoretically, right? That's just a simple way to sort of separate growth from scale.
Welcome to Periscope, the podcast that allows founders see what they may not already know. We discuss a range of topics from tech, finance, fundraising, and all the messy bits in between. Whether you're looking to learn about legal, compliance, governance, whatever it takes to build that amazing idea that you've got and take it from 0 to 100, this is the show that you're going to get all the info that you need. My name is Lola and I am your host today, and I'm so excited to have my guest with me today because we're discussing how to scale from 0 to 1,000%. And that really is what you do, Adia. So do you want to just introduce yourself very briefly? And not that you need an introduction necessarily, but just say a few words for our audience, then we can just talk about the topic in a little bit more detail.
Hi, my name is Adia Sowho. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me to talk about a topic that I live and breathe, whether I've liked it or not. You said 1,000%. I think, yeah, that's definitely everybody's goal. And for me, I think a bunch of companies will go from 0 to 1, right? They'll manage to start. A few companies will get from 1 to 10, but even fewer companies get to 100 and 1,000, right? Like you said. So I think I'm happy to be here to talk about what I think it takes to actually get to 100 and beyond and stay there in a market like ours.
Yeah. And do you know why I love the fact that we're having this conversation?
Tell me.
Because your career has just been incredible. And I actually want to sort of almost define you as a career chameleon. Is that okay? You're a career chameleon because you've been changing and twisted.
I have indeed.
You began as an engineer.
I did.
You did some consulting with Deloitte, is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. And then telco.
Yep.
Startup with Migo.
Yep.
Big company with MTN.
Yes.
Agri with Thrive. I mean, the list just keeps going on, and at every single step, you've redefined yourself and you've evolved to adapt to that environment.
I have indeed, yeah.
While scaling at every single stage. So curious to even get your thoughts on how you've adapted across that range and that spectrum of spaces that you found yourself.
It's interesting. It's easy to tell the story backwards, right? When you're in it or going forward or pushing through it, it doesn't. You don't really know if it's going to make sense on the other side of it, right? So that's typically my response when somebody says, "Oh, how should I think about where I'm going to be in 10 years?" I'm like, "It's okay if you don't know."
I don't even believe in 10 years. 5-year plans, 10-year goals. Just do the best
you can right now. Yeah, follow your interests.
And then follow that interest, follow that line, and things tend to work itself out.
I think what has been consistent though is that I've followed my interest, I've followed my energy, and made sure that I have learned enough to do well in a role. So I think that's what all of these roles, as diverse as they may seem, have in common, is that there was usually a big lofty goal that I had to sort of aspire and build myself towards. The adaptation was not easy, but I think the first thing to do is to recognize when you're in a different environment and then start figuring out, okay, how do I get from where I am right now to where... You know,
figure out where you are. And
you had to
adapt
figure out
that
where you are. Yeah, so I think not every environment is the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked at companies that have started from, I've been employee number 5,
Yeah.
right? And then there are companies, you know, like MTN was the largest company by revenue on Nigeria Stock Exchange. And, you know,
Incredible.
then I've done stuff in the middle, I've done
Yeah.
the turnaround. So but in each place I had to sort of step in and say, okay, where am I? Who do I need to be successful? Oh, and by the way, I've made lots of mistakes. So I think as much as there have been, you know, successes in the process of learning and getting quote unquote good at whatever I've done, you know, there'll be some missteps.
But I really like what you just said, which is getting good where you are. Because you often find that some folks just tend to rush a little bit too quickly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you must have to know when you've learned enough to take those learnings to the next thing, right? Where it's long enough that you've learned, right? But not too short that you really haven't picked up the depth that you need in that space.
Agreed.
How do you think through that?
I think once something starts getting applied naturally, like
Yeah.
when you don't have to think about it as much, then you're like, okay.
You kind of know.
You kind of
Yeah.
know. I think as much as I still work with an engineer's mind, I have learned to trust my intuition. So I think there'll be a point where someone will ask you a question that used to be hard, and then all of a sudden it doesn't feel so hard.
It
Just comes to you. It
Yeah.
might even feel easy. At that point, you're like, okay, cool. I've internalized
Yeah.
what I need to internalize from this role, from this season, from this situation. And, you know, maybe I can go find another challenge, right? It might be the same place. It might be a different perspective. It might be a completely different place. It just
I'm
depends.
curious to then talk about how we take that to scale, because our topic today is designing for scale in complex markets. We know that we're in a very complex market here, right?
Yes.
On many fronts.
Yes.
We were just discussing that earlier.
Yes.
Whether it's infrastructure, whether it's financing, whether it's, you know, everything that it takes to build is complex here, right?
Sure.
So designing for skill in these types of environments, what should we even, or what have you picked up, right, in your journey that you think is absolutely critical
Wow.
to make this work?
Okay, so that's a big question. I feel like, you know, there's a lot to unpack there. But let me start very simply. I think we've misread a few things, and we'll unpack that, you know, in our conversation. I think that we tend to take a lot of templates and models, right, from markets that have established certain things, like infrastructure, right? Infrastructure in the physical sense, because I think there's a broader definition for what infrastructure is, right? And then we take these templates and apply them here, and then there's friction. And in that friction, rather than refine the templates or find a new template for this environment, right? Because honestly, volatility is a natural state of being. It is actually down to the smallest cell in your body, right? Chaos is a law of physics. So it's not, there's nothing unnatural about it. It's actually quite natural. What is unnatural about it is
The level.
Is
The level of the
actually,
chaos.
even that, I still
The
disagree.
level of the chaos is
No,
unnatural.
no,
But
actually
it
it's
can
not.
be. I mean, you could argue that cancer cells is due to unnatural growth.
Fine, now we're becoming doctors, right?
You know,
No,
we
but
have
I
to
think
unpack everything across all dimensions.
fair. But what I think is unnatural is expecting volatility to calm itself down just because you want it to. You know what I mean? It's almost like I went kite surfing the other day, right? And there I was
In
trying
Lagos?
to not yet. I will do it in Lagos because there's a
Okay.
kite surfing community in Lagos, but
And there's a scuba diving
there is
community
this.
as well in
There
Lagos.
is,
I
there
just
is.
found out
There
recently.
actually is. That's even
Yeah.
more mature than kite
Yeah.
surfing, but that's a whole
That's a
other
whole different
story.
conversation.
But I found myself holding this kite and I was expecting the kite to behave in a certain way. And then it hit me, I'm like, Adia, you are arguing with the wind. Like it is the actual wind. Where are you going to start this conversation? So I think rather than argue with the wind, you have to learn to flow with the wind. And for me, I think you find skill a little bit more naturally when you start to design for this environment and you recognize that it's going to get a little windy sometimes. Right? So rather than say, why hasn't the wind stopped? Which is
For
typically
me.
what we do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's all right. How do I build to go with
Go
the
with
wind?
it.
That feels like an easier
So
question
that wind
to
could
answer.
be the market, could be your customers, could be the regulated environment you find yourself, could be whatever, even the infrastructure complexity that you find yourself with, it's
Absolutely.
sort of leading with that.
Absolutely. I
Fantastic.
think it's better to do that than to sort of butt heads with it.
I can't wait to unpack this with you.
Same. A lot of companies can launch, even fewer can scale, and even fewer than that keep scaling sustainably.
Can't wait to hear how startups and how founders can scale sustainably amidst all the complexity in this market.
I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Let's get started. So the topic for our conversation today is designing for scale in complex markets. And we have Adia that has done that many times over across different sectors. Whether it's the telco sector, whether it's the agri-tech sector, whether it's early stage, mid-stage, large businesses, she's been there, done that. So this truly is a masterclass on how we can think about scaling in our context. And I think that part is actually quite key, Adia. And I think you had mentioned that earlier when we were introducing this topic, that in our context, and building for this context is so key. Now, you've walked into many doors across your career trajectory, and you've seen different businesses build in different ways. I'm curious to know, what are the early signs that the business is ready to scale? As you just observe, that first 90 day, as we say.
Good question. And the reason I like the question is that people ask about readiness. Well, I feel like it's the next step to take. But the question is whether you take it at the right time or not. So I think for me, the right time to scale is when you're clear on a few things.
Okay.
You're clear on like the key equations in your business, right? So like, what's your equation for revenue? So if you were to take retail, you use footfall, conversion rate, basket size, right? You say your costs are running costs for the shop, staff costs, so on and so forth.
Turnover.
Right? It's surprising how many people don't know.
That's actually a very good point.
Yeah.
Is understanding the North Star metric.
Yeah.
That is truly relevant for that business.
Yeah.
And it's not the generic revenue, gross profit, net profit. That's important too.
Yeah.
But what are the really key operational KPIs that are absolutely critical for that specific business and industry?
Yes, but let me layer onto that, right? So because some people get carried away with a North Star metric, right? It's not just there for you to look at it, because that's what you do with a North Star, right? It has contributing factors. Each contributing factor is someone's job. Right, and you have to measure how well that job is being done
and contributing
to the North Star metric. So you don't want a situation where people show up at a meeting and they're like, okay, where's the North Star? Did it get there? Oh, that's cute, right? We don't know how it got there, why it got there, what made it get there. Do you understand? So that sort of visibility and understanding is key. So when I sort of like talk to a founder or a business, I'm looking to see, do you know your key equation in the business? Is it complete, right? If you change a variable, do you understand
and they have to know
what
how
that
to
does?
measure it, right? So you almost have to go the next level down.
Absolutely.
Even if you know it,
Absolutely.
are you measuring the right thing?
100%.
Right, and 100%. Are you really surfacing
100%.
those
100%.
sort of driving metrics to your North Star?
Yeah. So, it's very difficult to ask me what my favorite anything is, but my favorite thing to look for in a business is a dashboard.
Yeah.
And that dashboard tells me everything I need to know about whether that business is ready to scale.
Do you care if it's Power BI, Tableau,
I don't care.
Excel, whatever?
No, I don't care.
Know that you are tracking.
I don't care. Yeah. So I think, first of all, it can be manual. It cannot be manual. I think it cannot be manual.
It has to be real time.
If you are serious about making money, it cannot be manual.
In this day and age, you also shouldn't be, because you have all the tools.
You have all the tools.
It doesn't matter what industry you're in. You have easy tools that you can plug into your business.
Just not manual.
Yeah.
Right. So and the dashboard shouldn't be an inventory of what happened. That's the classic dashboard I see everywhere, right? Let's not even talk about vanity metrics. Vanity metrics they're necessary to talk to your board, but they shouldn't be running your business, right? And too many people use vanity metrics to run their business. But then when your dashboard is just a mixture of what happened and what happened yesterday. So what happened and when, right?
So what we sold and when we sold.
I'm just like,
That doesn't
okay.
help.
It doesn't, right? Because you are ready for scale to me because what scale is supposed to do, and it's different from growth, right? Growth is simply just getting bigger, just doing more. But scale is growing sustainably, where if you take the founder out of the business, the growth rate doesn't change. Your sort of growth should be easier with every unit. You should be learning something from each sale that is making it cheaper for you to find the next one. That's actually what scale is. By its full name, it is called economies of scale. But I think recently we've gotten carried away with just the word scale. Right? And to be honest, in developed markets, scale usually means just pushing harder and just growing in size. There's an assumption that you figured out unit economics. But here in more dynamic environments, you have to sort of nail that equation very, very carefully, because if you scale up and you haven't figured out that equation, you're going to
push back on that.
Tell me.
Right? Which is the notion that if you take out the founder and the business is not growing, it's not a scalable business model. So let's take some very well-known business models, right? Let's take ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If I take out Sam Altman, your argument is if ChatGPT stops growing, it's not a scalable business model. But it actually could be scalable. It could just be a scenario where there are other factors.
No, but
So you saw that with Uber.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Where we believe that business model is scalable. We've seen it replicated time and time again. But when we took out Travis, Uber stopped growing.
But that story has now changed.
Scalable business model.
Okay, so let me augment what I said. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you take out Sam Altman from OpenAI now, the business will continue to grow. But that is because his thinking has been converted into processes. It has been converted into standards. It has been converted into revenue. Such that if you take him as a human being out of the business, it will continue to grow. So I think that is a scalable business. Now, if we go to the case of TK and Uber, right? The revenue equation in that business was not positive. So TK's exit had to also do with how profitable Uber could be under his leadership, right? And now you have Dara, who has made it a profitable business. So it's interesting that you've actually mentioned two founders, right? Travis, TK made a business that could grow globally, but essentially it was not a scalable business. Right? But Sam, on the other hand, has probably built something, and you can sort of quibble over the fact that they're raising way more than some of their competitors, and they're sort of burning cash more than their competitors. But there's enough of the core thinking of what AI is supposed to achieve within OpenAI that business will probably continue to grow for a while, even if you remove Sam Altman.
So that's a scalable business
So
model.
you are also now seeing how we conflate scale, right? You will look at both of those businesses and think they're scaling comfortably, but there are problems in the back. And this is the question you originally asked me. What do I look for? Have you figured out your revenue equation? If you take out sort of like the founder from the room, can this business go on? And what I'm implying by that is, do you actually have processes? Does this business know how it makes money? Or do I need the founder in the room to tell me?
Now, that's necessary but not sufficient, right? So it's necessary that the founder has put in the right systems, processes, and so on.
And can delegate.
To allow that business scale.
Yes.
But it's not sufficient that simply doing that would then allow you scale. So just to make sure that our listeners also don't go away with the notion that once I have my SOPs, once I have, my org structure, once I have my processes clearly mapped out, then I can go on a vacation.
No, you can grow, but you can't scale.
But it's not sufficient that it would allow that business effectively scale.
No. So there's a difference between growing and scaling, right? You can grow. Doesn't mean you grow well, you grow healthily, you grow profitably. You can absolutely grow, right? But scaling, and it may seem arbitrary. Scaling, like I said, each incremental unit of value you earn should be cheaper than the last, theoretically, right? That's just a simple way to sort of separate growth from scale.
Fantastic. So you mentioned two things that you look out for when you walk into that room. First is, do they have a dashboard? Do they really understand the driving metrics for their business? So that's one.
Yes.
Second is, have they set up a business model and not just the model itself, but have they set up the fundamental pillars of that business, processes, structure, etc., to allow that business continually add value as they grow to make it scalable in the absence of the founder. Are there other things that you look out for walking into a business, day 1, day 30, day 90, that tells you that, okay, these guys sort of have it right, or they need to tweak A, B, C, D here and there to actually make it work?
What I've just told you is like a year's work, right? Like that.
Guys, what you just heard is a year's worth of thinking from Adia. Okay, so hope you respect that.
No, but the thing is I mentioned something about metrics, right? So you can go and look at what happened, who we sold it to, did it happen yesterday, did it happen again last week? But speaking of scale and making decisions tomorrow cheaper, when does that dashboard start to improve the decision making in the business on an ongoing basis? So how do you say, okay, I plan to sell 10 tomorrow. How well positioned am I for that?
Do that?
What are the chances that I'm going to sell 10 units of whatever it is I'm looking for tomorrow? What are the things in this business that are going to prevent me from doing that? What are the reactions I need to take?
What are those things that you see most often that prevent founders from selling those 10 units tomorrow? What are the things that actually make a scalable business actually break? Can they scale too fast? Is that a risk to keep an eye out for?
Okay.
Or is that just, one of the...
Yeah, so you can definitely grow too fast, right? You can definitely, so if you grow and you haven't figured out where your profits are leaking from, or why you are not profitable, or what you need to achieve before you're profitable, yeah, that's definitely the wrong time to chase growth. That's when you have to solidify that equation that we talked about.
Can we discuss Jumia? Right, that grew so fast, the bottom line wasn't necessarily reflecting that. So can we take that case study?
Yeah.
Right, where a few companies have grown rapidly in this market, but have sort of kept their eyes off the bottom line. I think it sort of brings us back to the topic of how do we scale in this complex market? Because in some markets, that playbook works. Amazon grew for years without being profitable, and investors rewarded them for that.
They did,
right?
yes.
So why did that model break in this market where Jumia is saying, let's use that? Amazon is doing it. Jeff Bezos is doing that in Seattle, and it's working for them. What makes it break in our complex market?
I think let's separate the market from the economy. Okay, so the US has built an economy that allows infrastructure to bear the buffer, right, of figuring out how to build a profitable company, right? So you've got physical infrastructure. For me, I think infrastructure is a much broader definition, right? It's infrastructure is the thing that reduces the cost of making mistakes. Okay, so he had funding. That's when you have.
So he had a finance infrastructure.
Honestly, so he had
allow him just keep going.
Yes, exactly, and he had a customer base whose attention he had. So even if it wasn't profitable for a long time, he had the funding that gave him the cushion to keep experimenting and iterating until he found what would. And whatever relationship he had with his shareholders, it was enough to assure them and keep them comfortable to keep funding him. Now, in markets like ours, I think often when you receive funding, maybe from a VC or wherever, they may not understand that in addition to creating your product, you have to create logistics infrastructure. You have to create talent infrastructure, because you are retraining people because where they are coming from or where they worked was not sufficient enough for them to do the job the way you need them to do the job. You're creating trust infrastructure, right? So an infrastructure has a different growth trajectory from a product, period. So when people call for patient capital, to me, this is why, right? It's because a business you have to even create power infrastructure, water infrastructure. Like you are filling in the gaps, right? That others take for granted, and they just pretty much pick up and start running with their companies.
So you then say that markets that require to build infrastructure is not worth you using that playbook where you're running with growth, not necessarily thinking about the bottom line. So if you have to put those foundational building blocks in place, you have to consider
Yeah.
both top line and bottom line.
Absolutely. I think in markets like ours, before you scale, you must stabilize first. I think in other markets, you can
scale,
grow, and then figure out
and figure out how
profitability
to
later.
make the numbers work.
Right.
Bottom line.
So for me, it's a slight difference, and it's an important difference that you can consider even at the design stage of your company. It's like, this is the infrastructure I'm going to have to build to ensure continuity of this company in the future. Okay, I can't just figure it out eventually. I mean, there's enough conversation, there's enough knowledge about what can go wrong, right? That at least, I mean, because risk is not an infinite issue. It's actually, it can be a well-defined issue. You have FX volatility. It's going to go up, it's going to go down. At any point in time, you have a one-year view of what can happen to the rate in Nigeria if you talk to the right people. So it now, to me, becomes less a problem of why did this rate change? As in, did I prepare my business for how much this rate is expected to change? It is going to change. And some days it will change in your favor and some days it won't. You know what I mean? You're going to have operational issues, you're going to have power issues, you're going to have supply chain issues, you're going to have, like, for instance, when there's and these things are not unique to Nigeria. When there's a chipset shortage, right? If China does not manufacture enough chipsets, there are actually fewer phones to sell in the world. There are fewer computers to buy in the world. So it's not these issues occur everywhere.
Can you always project it 1 year ahead? So to your earlier point on, if you have the right conversation, so you're an early stage builder, you're an early stage founder, you may not have access to those rooms where they're discussing macroeconomic topics that can truly shift policy and shift the market. How do you begin to manage for that risk? How do you begin to manage for the risk that government one day decides that certain products are no longer allowed, or you cannot operate without certain licenses, or we are now all moving cashless? I mean, okay, so that was not overnight. We had some,
murmurings.
Yes, and we had some room, some headway. But in some cases, it literally is shifting very quickly on you.
I'm going to push back on that. No,
because let's break that down.
I will say Twitter is a room, right? And Twitter is one of those rooms where, depending on how you've positioned yourself, you can hear a lot. You can talk to some of the richest people on the planet. You can talk to some of the most connected people on the planet. Nothing stops you from sending a DM to whoever. Right? And it's just entering public fora. But of course, treat the information as, I heard this in public, I'm not going to like...
Just to allow you plan.
Just to allow you plan. So
forecast.
I think, you have a confidence level in the answers you get. I'm not necessarily saying, go and bet the farm on it. But I would argue that you can access most people on social media or LinkedIn. Just ask the question. Somebody out there will give you an answer. It may be a good answer, it may be a bad answer, but this is where discernment is important. So I'll push back on the fact that, there are infinite risks. And I think the one thing you cannot predict might be exactly when the risk manifests. There is a risk, and that and the scope of what will manifest from that risk is extremely clear. There's no adult doing business in Nigeria that does not recognize these risks. These stories are very familiar. The only thing you don't know is the day it's going to show. And I think in terms of regulation, I think there's a certain group of companies, right? The bigger you are, you have no choice. You engage with your regulator.
You have to.
Right, but I think there is a fear, and a seemingly legitimate one, from engaging with the regulator too early, right? Because you don't want to. There's just fear anyway. But I think it's not necessarily a bad thing. That's how you hear what's happening or what's coming up, right? So if you can't, find somebody that's in there that can, and will do so anonymously.
So even though you might feel uncomfortable, or it might not line up with your business today, it's smart of you to get in those rooms because and
you can get there in so many different ways. Right? I mean, how many sort of prominent Nigerian or African business people are just on Twitter waiting for somebody to ask them something?
Could you also say that could be a distraction, right? Because part of your role as a builder, as a founder, is to focus on building. So when you're not thinking about, okay, I have to be sure that my eyes are on the ground, knowing what may happen in wherever, whatever room, isn't that taking energy away from the core?
Sure.
Or you could argue that in some markets, you don't necessarily have to do that because they're a bit more
but they have
stable.
infrastructure.
Yeah, they have
infrastructure. It's
to your
again
point.
about recognizing where you are in this market. If you don't pay attention to your risk, the risk will come and meet you. So we can't
simply bury your head in the sand.
No, you can't, right? And look, there are ways to automate and script Twitter and hear what people are saying. And then WhatsApp, your AI will talk to, your WhatsApp and send you a text message. Here's the gist ahead today on the things that concern you. You can set up a Google alert. It's not, if it feels noisy, I completely get that and I understand that. But there are ways to simplify this intelligence. But intelligence is important. Every business around the world, even in the developed markets, they gather intelligence, right? It's just that you have to structure, you have to align with the available intelligence that supports your business. Is it structured? Is it unstructured, right? So what you call, or what seems like a distraction because you have to go to many places, may cost you $10,000 in a single report somewhere else.
To get somewhere else.
So it's a trade-off. Which problem do you want?
Let's talk about building for here. And we've touched on a few points, right? The fact that you can't simply take the playbook of grow and expect that would work here without the infrastructure. Here you have to build it, right? Yeah. There are other complexities that this market affords just by the nature of building here. Okay. We were discussing earlier around even just the term emerging market, right? Because that's what is commonly thrown around. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a quiet judgment that comes with that word, emerging. Okay. And my challenge with it is that it implies that we're going somewhere.
But we should be going somewhere, shouldn't we? Like we really should be aspiring to go somewhere.
Absolutely. But where the place that particular word suggests, the markets that we are compared against, I don't know that that's the somewhere we want to go to or can get to. And I say so because those markets developed under sort of like a lot of imperial leverage, let me put it like that, right? And that type of leverage just isn't available now. So you can't build roads at the price that roads were built in those countries.
Even cost of labor, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Zero
directly
cost.
Literally. So 100 to 500 years ago. Let's leave the politics, right? Yeah. But like 100 to 500 years ago, when all these things were being built, just a different, people didn't have debts, they didn't have trade agreements to honor, they didn't have tariffs, things were just done differently. Right?
ESG wasn't the thing.
Right. So right. So now the question is, okay, how do you then achieve prosperity, right? Because that's actually the real goal, is prosperity at a national level without wearing a very specific set of clothes. So I think my issue is with the specificity of the path, right, that we are supposed to go.
So you think that in that term emerging, it's already painting a picture of what the path should look like. Absolutely. And your point is that we should build for where we are today, not necessarily what image we have in our head of what path we want to 100%.
Get to. So like when you are judging a country by GDP or smartphone penetration, right? It says some things about a country, but it doesn't say everything about a country, right? You start to make implications on the sophistication of the people, the size of the markets, the complex, right? So for me, I feel like those words are just a little bit too heavily loaded. The word I prefer is emergent, right? Yeah. Where for us, where we have not enjoyed top-down structures. This is what this country looks like, right? These are the institutions that govern the country. To align with this institution, this is how you must behave. People prefer chaos, and I think that's one of the things that keeps
chaos.
Yeah, I think so. It's a natural human state.
That people do prefer chaos. That I'm not sure I actually prefer chaos.
No.
I like some peace in my life.
So there's peace, there's chaos. Let me try and elaborate on that comment. I think people enjoy structure, but I think structure takes different forms. Do you understand? And yes, I don't. You don't necessarily want to rewrite your life every given day, right? But at the same time, just because I didn't go to Harvard doesn't mean I don't know anything about business. Of course. So this is what I mean. So I think sometimes people, our societies and civilizations have been here for hundreds and thousands of years. They've gotten something right. So we can't throw all that away, right, to go and build something that we now have to go and get an education on. It's not naturally occurring to us, right? And that's what I think causes us the challenge. So like we're trying to speak a language we don't intrinsically know.
Even though it has worked in the past for many years.
It has worked in the past for some people under very specific conditions. Right? Now, we don't share those contextual conditions. We have different contextual conditions. So I think keep the but refine it around the contextual conditions.
This is a slight tangent, but you're almost suggesting that even the way education is 100%. Delivered,
100%.
Tertiary education, 100%. In light of the world we live in today, whether that's AI or anything else, the way that learning is done fundamentally would have to shift and evolve.
I think about 15 years ago, a cousin of mine graduated from university and said, university is nonsense.
After she graduated,
she said this course I've done adds no value to my life. Right? And then went on to go and get a series of certifications which now add value to their life. What happened on Twitter after 2020? Everybody started throwing away, degrees don't matter, la la la. Now, this is something that I first heard here in Nigeria, long before I heard anybody say it.
That degrees don't matter.
That degrees don't matter. And essentially what
I would push back on that.
Hold on, let me complete
the point, right?
So essentially what the person was saying is they were struggling. There was a gap between the qualification they received and their ability to earn money with that qualification their ease of earning money with that qualification at that particular point in time, right? So then they now had to embark on a process of self-education to now get qualifications that are now giving them the sustained sort of living that they have.
Yeah.
So again, I stated an opinion from that person's specific perspective. I have 2 degrees. I'm not going to tell you that a higher education is not important. But what I'm trying to tease out is the fact that the person was connecting the return on value to effort. If I go to this school, what money am I going to get out of it? And I think fundamentally that is a challenge with education in these parts right now. It's like nobody struggles to learn anything if they cannot see how it converts into giving them prosperity that they are looking for in the future. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Sometimes what you get out of it is not necessarily, those 4 years of you going to university. Sometimes it's the stamp that you get out of it.
But like you and I,
network that you get out of it.
You and I cannot offer a perspective on that. We are talking about networks and prosperity and other disciplines. Somebody wants to eat. If you cannot prove to a human being that getting this qualification is immediately going to convert to a job that feeds me, they're having a completely different conversation.
If you don't get it, it's a lower likelihood of you actually eating.
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Which is why people are not choosing degrees. So my point is, I think you and I may share a particular privilege that allows us to come at the conversation from that particular point. Angle. But I really want to just boil us down to incentives. Do you understand? When I wake up, what is my biggest issue? Just my ability to eat, my ability to prosper, my ability to build wealth at whatever level or aspiration I have reached. Do you understand? So, and if we lose sight of that, you lose sight of incentives that guide people to do anything they do in this world. This is just to try and connect the dots. Is that nobody's going to do anything unless they know why.
Yeah.
Do you understand? And you and I, we have a different why. Yeah. Sometimes the people we are selling to, their why is very different.
Yeah. So, we've spoken about what a founder needs to put in place to scale, right? To keep growing that business in a very sustainable manner. Sometimes things don't always follow the path that you intended to, and you have to shift course. You have to turn around the business, right? And there's a bunch to unpack. The first is even knowing when it's time, like when this thing is sort of slowly gearing off the path that we want it to be on. How do you start to see that? How do you see that big picture? And then once you realize that either intentionally by yourself or through your board members or your advisors or whomever, what steps do you then have to put in place to successfully, gear that business in the right direction? You've worked with several companies that have had to be turned around based off of their current trajectory, right? So let's deep dive into that a little bit.
Okay. I think there's going to be to see a turnaround coming. right? There's going to be a metric that is slipping away from you, either a cost or your ability to make money. There's going to be something that is changing faster than you have control over. To the point where it can potentially reshape the business entirely.
Let's summarize that.
Okay.
Because that's a very important nugget that I want our audience to sort of take away from this.
Yes.
So the point at which you feel that you need to turn around a business is when certain things are slipping away from you. That could be cost, or that sort of capture the essence of it.
For me, I would pause and ask myself if this business needs a major intervention, if there's a metric that is so off course that I have no idea how to course correct without changing the shape of the business fundamentally, right? So whatever the industry, whatever the founder, whatever the business, right, that metric may vary. And that's just speaking to at least my perspective on turnarounds, what I've seen. I'm sure there are deeper turnaround experts, than me that will have a perspective and a better, more succinct definition. But basically, something is going to be out of control and it's slipping away. Like, and there's
to be very
nothing.
Clear. To be very obvious.
It will be very obvious. Everybody's going to know. It's like it's like you put a stone inside a river. This thing is going to drop. Like, there's going to be a metric that just doing that, and you know that if it hits the bottom, the business is dead, and you need to make a call before it gets to that bottom. But on the other side of that, right, to now address the turnaround, you have to first of all be able to confront the truth of what is happening. I think many businesses...
You cannot be in denial.
You cannot be in denial. So I think the businesses that go from alive to dead without a period in the middle are the ones that are unable to
completely blinded
to articulate or face their truth. Yes. And sometimes that problem is more to do with articulating it. Right?
So you may see it.
You may see it, but then you'll be like, maybe let me check tomorrow.
Postponing it. You can't confront it.
Right, and that's what fear does, right? And we shouldn't act like, adults or businesses or business leaders don't ever confront things that cause them fear. They do. So the truth, you must first confront the truth. And like I said, that metric that's slipping, you must now be able to contain it. You may have to, again, stop a major activity in your business in order to just say, you know what, I need to plug this hole. For me to plug this hole,
I need to cut certain things.
I need to cut certain things. And this isn't, if you are cutting people, you are not still at a turnaround level. I feel like that's still a simpler solution. Like literally, there's like a whole customer base you may not be able to talk to again. Do you understand? Because talking to them means that you are sacrificing the rest of the business, right? So operations probably have to be grinding to a halt. So you now have to figure out what that leak is, and you now have to contain it, right? So
you're almost doing surgery on the business.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. So the Thrive story is public. I've talked about it. The founders have talked about it. They're doing very well, by the way. So I'll reference that. So in their case, they had folks that had, bought these, agri products from them with an expectation of being paid by a certain date. They were not paid by that date. It was visible. It was public. So the issue that we all confronted together, right, me and the founders and the team, was, okay, we are late. It's public. And we need to figure out how we're going to pay. Okay, so to contain the issue, we now had to figure out, okay, how many people do we owe? How late are we? What's the trajectory for this thing? So over the next 6 months, if we are here, where's this number going to get to? So we did that, like you said, that very sort of surgical approach. And it was
talking to customer by customer, right? Or not
pretty
even,
much.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Restructure the agreement.
Pretty much, right?
Yeah.
So there were a bunch of stakeholders talking to the investors, because even they were like, what's going on? Johnson, because when you hear the customer noise, that doesn't necessarily explain what's going on in the business. How did the business get here? Right? Then you now figure out, okay, what do we need, right, to stop this? How do we arrest this issue? And then how do we recover from this issue? Then you're also managing the customers, and you're sort of explaining to them, okay, this is what happened, right? You take some bullets for that. Right? This is what we're going to do to fix it. Take some bullets for that. And then when
it takes guts to do that, right? To go to your stakeholders, whether it's your investors, your customers, your clients, even your employees, to say, guy, this is where we are with this thing.
Yes, indeed.
Right.
Those remain some of the hardest conversations I've had in my career. And honestly, when I think about some of those conversations, the hair on the back of my neck still stands up. It's still quite traumatic. I took quite a bit of abuse.
So they all blame you, right?
They did. Yeah, they did. They blame the company. They blame the founders. Yeah. But you know what though? I think because when we figured out what we were doing, we were open, we were transparent, and we kept our promises. If we said we're going to have a call, we're going to have a town hall with our customers, we did. I showed up. I think there was a December I had COVID and I couldn't show up. People still attended the call. The founders handled the call. People now showed up at the next call to see if I was back. Right? And then even after we paid some people, they kept showing up and be like, oh, how's the company doing? Yes. Is the company okay? Yes. Right? So like I said, you must first, step one is to confront the truth. Step two is to contain the issue. And then step three is, like you said, surgery. Just be surgical about addressing the problem and be extremely focused. I think I met like 10% of the Thrive team like the first 3 months. I didn't see anybody else. Right, but it was really because we were trying to stay extremely focused on the issue, and then when we kind of
go shake every single hand.
No. So I wasn't that kind of CEO. Yeah. I don't think a turnaround CEO can be
shaking people's hands.
Can be no kumbaya. Just let's make sure we're alive.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's just those three things that you have to know. What is happening? How can I stop the leakage? What's the drastic action that we need to take?
And if you need outside help, because in your case, you were brought in to help do that. So it's also almost accepting that maybe this is beyond at this stage that we're at, and being open to asking for that support.
100%. Not enough is said about the humility of the founders. Who were willing to have me join, the support of their investors who were willing to find me and ask me. Right, so and then they were still friends. Do you understand? Because these types of things,
it really bonds you.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. Yeah. And you never know when you're dealing with people you don't know. When you're asked to do something this controversial, like the phrase so many people started using with me at that point was "stay in your white." And I'm like, no, that's actually
was what
stay in my white. Like a lot of people cautioned me from getting involved because they're like, we don't want this to be the company that tarnishes your reputation. But honestly, the company I get stopped about the most, well, actually, no, not after MTN, but I still get stopped about so frequently in public.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm literally somewhere I don't know anybody, is Thrive.
It's Thrive. Amazing.
It's Thrive,
because of the impact that you had in that business.
Yeah, it's a good story for the ecosystem. And I'm very proud of the team that remains there and that the company is still alive and still doing really well.
Fantastic. Let's shift gears slightly. Because part of growth is natural, right? Even if you just think of nature, right? Things grow naturally. But I mean, in the agri space, you also know this, right? From Thrive, sometimes we all need a little bit of help to allow us grow even faster. And I'm not sure that founders often can see that or know that or know what to add or what to do to allow them scale faster than the natural pace of growth. So let's break down natural pace, first of all, and what that looks like, right? And when that's okay, right? And we know what your end goal is. Let's then look into, okay, we want to speed this up. What tools do we have in our toolbox to actually speed this up? And how do we begin to mix and match that toolbox to make this make sense? Okay,
so I may not answer this question the way you want me to. Because I think it's less about the toolbox and more about understanding who you're dealing with, but understanding them in a different way. I think when we sort of think about forming companies, we take, fixed business models, fixed approaches that have a lot of context baked into them. And the lives of the human beings in these businesses is completely different. And one of the ways that shows up is demand. Like in developed markets, demand is very articulate. It knows what it is and it knows how it needs to be met. Then it's now a question of, okay, I want X, right? Now I need to go and find who can give me what I want. But in markets like ours where, and markets like that, the risk of trial is low. Because worst case scenario, if you put something on your credit card and you don't like it or it doesn't work or the company didn't behave well, you call the credit card and get a reversal on the charge.
Yes, and
right?
they will reverse it.
Now, in markets that don't have infrastructure performing the role of a safety net, remember I said I think the role of infrastructure is much broader than roads and bridges.
Yeah.
Right? When you don't have those safety nets, people don't, unless the need bites them.
Strong, yeah.
It's extremely strong. It's critical to life. They're not necessarily going to go and
must be a painkiller.
Thank you very much. Right? So I think what then happens is lots of people will build a feature business and think it's a painkiller, but it's not. It's not. So I think we need to get a lot smarter about following our customers where they are. Don't assume anything. Right?
So you see that vitamin products or feature products can't work in this complex market, where it can work in other markets. We were discussing Labubu earlier, right? Where that is not a painkiller for anybody as far as I'm concerned, right? But that took off, right? And we were just joking that would not work here. So are we then saying, as a founder, as you build for this market, we're saying, don't build a vitamin, don't build a feature product, because that just won't work in a complex market like ours?
So I'm not saying that.
Okay.
But you take a vitamin after you're taking a painkiller. Right? So I think the bigger problems to solve are the painkiller problems. All right? And then after that, you can have vitamins. You know what I mean? So I'm sure somewhere in the origin story of Labubu, we will find out that it's a vitamin, but it solved the painkiller problem first. I think you can't. I'm
not sure what that story is.
No, I remember reading something somewhere. I think the guy that invented it actually works for a company that actually makes other accessories, and it started off as an attachment on one bag and then became an attachment on every bag. So, but then the bag was the painkiller product in this particular case. So. And yeah, it was just so ugly, it became a novelty. But I'm not saying those types of things are not possible here. But I just think that the more tangible problems, like if you sit with a customer, right, like think about it, people actually sell pepper, meat, gala, food on the road. Like demand actually comes to meet you where you're sitting. Do you understand? Like so even the concept of supermarkets, which is again well-designed, articulate demand, has taken time to take off, and it has taken off for people of a certain background, of a certain social strata.
And not for everyone.
And not for everyone,
some
right?
brands have shut down.
Do you understand?
We know some big names that have pulled out of the market.
Exactly. And I think that's where, again, there's a mismatch between feeling entitled to demand just because it meets smartphone penetration or GDP or traffic expectations.
Or population. That's always That's always the one that gets
right
me.
Because you so let's stay with the example of supermarkets, right? My mother has probably been buying meat from the same person for a decade, right? At least, or fish. Like there are markets that we are used to. We've bought from there. We are assured of the quality. We are assured of the safety. All of a sudden, I now need to go to a supermarket that has a fridge in this country where there's power loss. So there are quality questions.
My first thinking is this thing even fresh? Should I?
Yeah. So what a lot of those guys, that enter with that expectation of demand don't do is they don't think about what risk am I asking the customer to overcome in order to come to this store. You know what I mean? So for me, will I go and start buying meat in it? No, I won't do that, right? Because again, I don't know the butcher. I know the butcher I have. Me and him have an arrangement. My driver knows
and if
the
meat is not fresh,
the meat
will send it right back.
But I can't do that in a supermarket. So even though we are mimicking the kinds of structures and businesses we see in infrastructure-rich environments, you have not negotiated with the risk and trust environments in this market.
So what maybe not tools now, since that's not the way you want to think about it, but what elements can a founder begin to play with to allow them scale much faster than the organic scaling path? Or you think...
No.
Yeah, so there must be...
I'll suggest one. Like I said, there's so much to unpack on this topic, and I feel like we won't be able to touch on all of it today. So I think we underestimate relationships as infrastructure in Nigeria. And I think that that if you sort of
From a trust perspective.
Yes. Right? So when I think about how much I buy or we buy based on the recommendation of someone else or through a human being, because
or even
I
hiring,
know,
right? Oftentimes
right,
it's
right,
referrals.
it's referral.
Yeah.
If you now look at industries in Nigeria and think about how many of them rely on human beings to communicate value, to communicate quality, to communicate trust, right? Many of them. Retail is 100% built like that. Right? So all of a sudden you are telling me that the guy that I used to buy from, that I know, that has given me discounts, that has repaired this thing when it's fixed, I should abandon him and go to this brand. So all of a sudden I'm supposed to trust a brand, right? And then sometimes when I go to the brand and the thing I want is not there,
I'm still going back
I'm supposed,
yeah.
right? So it's almost like, so for instance, when I've written about this before, where people talk about, and I know this sounds weird being a CMO saying this, right? People talk about how much brand is an asset. But in a market like this, distribution is as big, if not a bigger asset than brand. Why? Because it fits our contextual, environment, right? So if I
going out to get that stuff,
if I leave my house,
I know that it's an hour, 2 hours.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
I'm going to get something, and then it's not there. Oh yeah, which one is there?
It's there.
Who is the
Just
human being telling
the one
me
close by?
So you're doing risk management. I think Nigerians are fantastic risk managers. The world over, right? You see us in jobs where our role is to anticipate risk. Like the entire, like I think it's in England, the entire project management industry. Every Nigerian, like so many Nigerians there, simply because we're just better at managing risk. Because Nigerians have more problems before 9 a.m. than most people in the world have in a month. Right? So we are fantastic at anticipating risk. So when you come from that background, you're going to latch on to the brands that meet your needs. Finish. So speaking of organic growth, I mean, communication is important. Being articulate about what you sell is important. But the human being that's going to have the conversation is also very important. This is why business development is extremely important here. Partnerships are very important here. I think that also, okay, good. Look at banking in Nigeria versus fintechs, especially, institutional banking versus agent banking. We sat down for 100 years of banking and we only penetrated what? 25%.
Very, very thin slice.
Thank you very much. Okay, but when we took the banks through the people to the human beings that were saying we were unbanked, we have now gotten to
iceberg problem.
Fantastic. We have now gotten to 75% financial inclusion. Just to me, from that one change. Right? And it's something I have seen this industry evolve over the last 15 years. The thing that moved the needle, because the institutional banks did not change their products, did not add more branches, right? They followed GDP, population, traffic, and so on and so forth.
Education level, literacy rate.
That fed the branch population network. But there are human beings that will not enter a bank because they don't know what it's like. They don't want to go through a sliding door. But if an agent comes to meet them and says, give me 10 naira today, right? I will give you 15 naira at the end of the month because that is how interest works. And then that person comes back, gives you 15 naira once, twice, 3 times. That is the bank.
I really like that analogy. And I like it because it's also applicable. If I think of ride hailing, the ride hailing industry. When Uber came in, it was cards, right? It was all nice and clean. You had to have a Visa card or a, MasterCard, and we all know what percentage of the population had that. When another player came in and said you can pay with cash, we'll take that. It was an explosion of that sector.
Exactly.
So the point is, as you're thinking about scaling for early stage founders and startups and entrepreneurs, it's really understanding the local context and how the current population currently transacts or do business or carry on their day-to-day, and working within that framework, right? Versus importing foreign models that may necessily not just scratch the surface, but may not necessarily go deep.
100%. So I think a lot of people think localization is just collecting naira, right? Like instead of collecting dollars, collecting. No, but you have to look at how human beings build enough trust in that industry to complete a transaction. What are the processes and the steps? I think there are a couple of ride-hailing companies now that have introduced negotiation. There's negotiation into them. Why? Because whether we like it or not, the process of haggling is part of how you get to know somebody. Like, think about it. You go to the market, somebody gives you a price, you give them, and you're like, now, you don't want me to buy. Then, depending on the kind of compromise they make, you decide whether you are going to, one, transact with that person that first time or transact with them again in the future. So whether we like it or not, it's a trust building exercise, right? People trust that more than cards.
The question that then comes to mind, though, is are we then suggesting, I don't think that this is the case, because we've leapfrogged many times in this economy.
Yeah.
Because suggesting that we have to operate, or founders have to operate within the current way that business is done seems to then suggest that any new innovation outside of that may not necessarily work, which we know is also not true. Because we've seen, telcos, right? That's always a classic example, right? Smartphones, etc. Who would have thought, even POS devices, who would have thought that cashless Lagos would actually ever take off? Because we all said, we are all cash, it would never work. But here we are, it worked. So how do we begin to differentiate that? Meaning, how do we build for scale, leveraging the current way with which we operate, whether that's negotiation, paying with cash, etc., versus innovative business models that can still scale but completely change the way that we currently work?
I think you still have to start from where the human being is, right? At the end of the day, one of the reasons digital payments didn't take off was the cost of the POS units, which has significantly dropped because a specific set of people dropped that cost.
Interesting.
But then they used an agent model, which meant that rather than letting the POS sit with one human being and relied on the flows of the business of that particular human being, you have a roaming agent who can then aggregate transactions across 10 businesses and then justify the cost of that POS, right? Which does both things. So I'm not necessarily saying anybody should approach anything with a view that it's uncivilized, or but don't try and don't negate it. Don't replace it. First of all, observe it and understand it, and then place yourself within it. So even look at telcos. Okay, so we started placing calls. People were placing calls at home, but if telcos had launched with monthly plans, there would have been no progress.
Dead out of, from day one.
No progress. Right? Because of the lack of infrastructure, the implication is that there's a lack of trust in our environment. And Nigerians, therefore, in the absence of trust, need a lot more control. Okay? So I can't pay you for the month. There's so many things that can happen between now and the end of the month. I may need that money for something else. Something may happen to that money after I give it to you. You and I know that happens. And because there are no structures in place, there's no, that individuals can resort to, it becomes important for me to establish the infrastructure that keeps me safe myself. So that was why it was important to go from monthly to pay as you go. So that I can fracture how much airtime I want to buy according to
what is going on in my world today.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. What is safe for me to transact at that particular point in time, right? So 100 naira still remains the most purchased denomination of airtime, right? And it's not because the people are poor, because I've seen human beings that will buy that 100 naira denomination 10 times in one day.
So they have that money,
yes,
but at that point in time,
it's not the lack of money.
That's just what they're looking to spend, right? To manage their risk.
If you look at Okada drivers, they actually buy petrol multiple times a day. Right? Simply because they have not seen they've done the cost-benefit analysis of storing money in their gas tank. And they'd rather have that money
as cash in,
right? Cash in because hand. They cannot predict demand. Okay, so again, you end up with these hybrid business models. Now, if you look at a company like MTN, which really, or telcos generally, which really adapted to the local context, they are still some of the largest companies in the country. So it's not that you can't build a company, right, of significant size. You can, but you cannot dismiss the local context.
You cannot demand that the local context always shifts.
No. So I think replacing the local context is the danger. A lot of people want to replace the local context. I think finding a middle ground and doing a blend is where you actually now achieve success. Look at what has happened to butchers now. They all have Instagram, they all have WhatsApp, they all have logistics. So if it is inconvenient for you to go to the butcher, no problem. The butcher will come to you. Either way, better solution than a supermarket. Right? Especially if the supermarket is in an isolated mall that I have to make a dedicated journey to. If it's on my way,
it might be okay.
You might as well just be a gala seller that I talk to because I park my car quickly.
Just having that wall on Lekki Ekpe Expressway completely killed ShopRite's business, to your point.
100%.
So when that road was open, ShopRite was on the way. There was a lot of traffic going to the Palms. As soon as that fence went up and you had to make a U-turn to enter, that was the end of it.
Done.
Yeah.
So it's
the same business, the same product offering, the same selection, everything the same.
But the access
changed.
To it. Yeah. And yes, we're talking about physical access, but then it also you can layer that access in so many other ways. But all of a sudden, the business was inaccessible, and alternatives were more accessible.
And that's it. Yeah.
That's it.
Amazing.
But somebody will say it's Nigeria. Do you understand? Somebody will blame the market where because that hasn't happened to Ebano, has it?
No, it hasn't.
It hasn't.
Yeah.
But then look at Ebano store locations.
Will
access
easy.
Ever be cut off from those roads?
No. And even if it were, they'll figure out how to be sure that they relocate to a place where it's accessible.
I've never met him, but I'm sure if the road was going to be closed, he will hear long before the people that own the road will, and he will stop it.
Yeah.
Or at least address it.
Yeah.
Right? No, but would they shop right?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Adia, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for making the time. And I think there are three major takeaways that I have taken out of our conversation today. The first is, as founders and entrepreneurs think about scaling, you really have to know your metrics. You have to have a clear understanding of what's driving your business, not just what you're selling and who you're selling it to, but what are the key factors that are truly making that business tick, and what would truly make it scale. 100%. We've also unpacked the difference between scaling and growth. Second, we discussed the key difference between growth and scaling. They're not the same, or not to be confused at all. I think that was very clear through our conversation.
100%.
When things don't go the way we want them to go, we need to have the foresight to identify it, to figure out how to course correct, and to literally do surgery on their business and get very tactical to take steps to turn that business around. It takes humility. It takes being honest with yourself, but that's what's important, and that's what's key to do to truly make that business survive. Yes. We then came around to talk about how to ensure that you're not simply growing organically, but you are growing in a much more scalable manner, and that you're implementing the right infrastructure, the right processes, the right systems to truly allow a business go from 0 to 1,000%.
And to add to that, I mean, it's to say that you're growing from a place of your own customers' real need, rather than a need you heard about, saw someone else be successful with, right, and then decided to build for. And then we end up in this place where we have solutions looking for problems, as opposed to problems looking for solutions. I think that was a great summary, and this has been a really nice conversation.
This has been an incredible discussion, Adia.
I think I want everybody to scale. I think everybody deserves, if you want to do the Lord's work of building a business, I think you deserve
work.
It is. I think everybody deserves a business that is sizable enough for them to make the impact that they desire, and for you to build and share the prosperity that you're trying to do. So I think it's the pulpits that I will preach from for as long as I can.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adia, for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time. Please follow us on our social media channels at Instagram at periscope.podcast, on TikTok at periscope.podcast, on Twitter at perismedia, and on YouTube at periscope.podcast. You can also see our content on our WhatsApp channel if you search for Periscope, as well as on our LinkedIn business channel. If you have any questions whatsoever, please go to our website and scroll to the bottom to the Slido page and enter any questions that you may have that you want us to address. You can also leave feedback, comments, and compliments for us. Thank you very much for listening.